My name is Rob Ellis, Pink Development Construction. Today we're going to be looking at master plan communities, and this is one of those things where I stare at 1 million square feet buildings every day. Um, it is unfathomable how big some of these are, and it's important to study them. And as you look at long-term planning and long-term growth metrics and long-term land tracks that you're identifying, you have to say, where do you have a competitive advantage? And all of the Texas firms are in all of the Texas firms. I'm in a capital market. Austin doesn't really have them, but I would say that it's very difficult to compare these two. They're almost identical, but I think there's more confidence in Florida. And that's because of the robust limited land, right? Texas doesn't have any really limited land. There's not really coastal luxury markets. So the land constrained markets are always going to appear sub pockets. It's better for infill. Everything's growing together from all sides, from the top, the bottom, the sides to central Florida and north. So as large communities come in, you can substantiate yourself with a strong position. Um, I started this question by asking, so in this video, we're gonna go through Texas versus Florida super quick, and we're gonna go into probably one of the top MPCs that I've seen in the last 10 years. And that's going to be one that we model a lot of ours off of in terms of amenities, and things like that. Clusters, pods, all sorts of stuff you can look at. So, development environment, Texas is very easy to develop in, but it's also more spread out. If you look at Texas major cities, if you look at the maps, you have these are all spread out and they don't grow together. This is East Texas. Okay. If you look down here, it's a smaller area, right? Because there's so much preserved land and limited. You see how the highways have come around, right? Like, and there's all these. You could put like we're debating if we should do an MPC in Okeechobee or not ever, right? And that's meant because you've seen infill. There was big flooding down here in where did it go? Arcadia. You've seen a lot of places like Sebring, Avon, all of these have been growing. All of these, you see anywhere along 17, right? These corridors, you can see these townships starting to build out. Any of these corridors along here, as long as the infrastructure there, 95. We're looking up more in Osceola County on this corridor, 192, 441, closer to the coastal. So really, but because it's such a breakout, it's an access point to get over here. These main corridors is something that we've always looked at. I-4, this will probably be expanded someday, and you just have it nonstop. It's so many different pockets of Florida that all of the municipalities are growing together. You see stuff like this where it's a management or a wildlife, but all of these there's so many towns to build in. The Village is one of the largest MPCs ever in Central Florida. So you're anchored by kind of up here, but we're still looking at these corridors, infill along here. If you look at MPCs, these four cities here, this loop, Jacksonville's the same thing. We don't even really look up at Jacksonville, and then you could still go all the way up into here. Even Tallahassee, I think, has an MPC. So as we look, um, it's there's larger land tracts, and MPCs tend to have higher absorption. Which state has higher absorption across the board? It's typically unbelievable. It can be higher absorption in MPCs, migration trends, retiree, and lifestyle-oriented communities, quicker sales cycles, faster absorption rates in 55 plus, 31,000 acres, 2,200 homes annually, 3,200 in the villages. Now, Ohio's biggest MPC is in Columbus, and I don't even think they hit more than 200 homes a year. Now, that could be wrong a little bit, but I also think it's how they phased it. It put in the infrastructure. There's a lot of things. It what didn't have really strong anchors. It's more of a residentially focused one, so it's why you kind of have trouble. Florida's growth is one of the fastest in the U.S. with 467,000, and Texas is the same. So we started by saying which one is going to be better. It's saying that entitlements, utilities are. This is a very utility heavy state, but you can when you get to Florida and you have a large land tracts, you can literally just buy your own and develop your own utilities. So. It's really not a big deal. It might be slower, but it's kind of what Walt Disney. It's very common for very large land assemblages to do that. Land costs can be similar. I think you can find sites in both. Um, Big sewer extensions. This is say MUDs dominate it, CDDs dominate. It's very common to have all sorts of stuff, wildlife issues. I think it's harder to develop here, but land value is worth a way higher takedowns. Either way, it's almost impossible to differentiate between these two. It talks about the build to rent, very strong and central in Florida. D.R. Horton for builders, lot sizes, community themes, trails, clubs, cul-de-sacs, loops, whatever. Now, I have a lot of friends that move out of Miami because it's too expensive where I live, and they don't move to Texas. They move to Central Florida where it's affordable. Very common trend that you see. And so I think you see probably a higher blended equity. I think you probably see more just it's a lot. You also have affordable housing. Let's see about that. What about affordable housing incentives and live local? This is one of the big reasons I moved here. Um, the live local is a guaranteed um we're talking about like a guaranteed uh we're talking about developer friendly loopholes. We're talking about just the process of platting and forcing density. And that's overlay districts, mixed use, OZs, faster entitlements, brownfield. We are talking about live local for vertical development. But from what I've seen, Texas doesn't have anything like this. Live local is the most more aggressive for state level support incentives and implementation. This is so density bonuses for taller and when you look at some of this stuff, I would say it's more state back funding. I'm talking about the use of affordable housing to force density on municipalities. So if you can get something approved, you can continue to. Florida's live local incentives to build affordable housing in urban and TODs, but you can also do, if you can get, let's say I got a 20-story building approved in a MPC. Would that allow me to continue to do that in future phases within a mile. See, so you don't really see probably the combination of that, but if you start to if your 20th building is in an MPC, how far is the radius of live local? So this is part of it. So if you get a hotel approved as an anchor somewhere and it's within 1 to 2 miles, you could strategically develop along a pipeline and continue to expand larger buildings, right? You probably don't see that. This is straight horizontal. I don't see MPCs higher than 4 stories. You don't really see a lot of the combination of live local, the tallest structures allowed, community residential or mixed use, zoning, right? On an out parcel, they might push that community feel and walkability, but it doesn't mean that you can't cater to a broad young families, empty nest or low rise or townhomes, affordable housing, 3 to 4 stories. And that's part of the thing. So, but I would say that there is an incentive as a long-term developer to stay geographically focused, and that is one reason that you might build in that. So we're looking at absorption trends. We were talking about densities. We were talking about top speeds, and they tend to be higher. Mirada is the number one. It's growing faster than anything else, and it's because it's in a well-located area on a main corridor outside of probably the fastest, two of the fastest growing pockets. Absolutely perfectly located. If you couldn't buy anything in I-4, that's a great one. And that's in San Antonio, Texas, or San Antonio, Florida. If you check it out here, you see Dade City. So this is actually technically a Tampa suburb, right? And so for them, this is the this is the area that we're talking about. And so there's lots of infrastructure in here. You could see if I was looking at doing one, I would be looking. This corridor is unbelievable right here, along with this one too, out to Newport Richey. These are unbelievable right here. Anything along these tracks. They put the infrastructure in that when I drove this a long time ago. So I think you just see massive, massive, massive growth more than anywhere in Texas. Just anywhere you can do an MPC. Easier to entitle, ideal for land banking, which we don't really want to land bank. Our goal is to get in and out of an MPC and to sell them. You just saw a big institutional level interest in that, and you see most major land groups. One of the biggest ones, they have one in Tampa. You see most BTR developers looking at it. Amenitized MPCs, lifestyle branding, lagoon premium, stronger institutional interest. I would say I moved to Florida, not Texas, and that's because I wanted to be near the water. Texas has really bad beaches, and so I think in general the desirability is going to be better. I think Texas is more affordable, but I mean there are MPCs with houses that go up to $900,000 down here, which you wouldn't even be able to touch in Ohio. When you're talking about this, you talk about raw land. Um, this is kind of pushing it. We target under 50,000, but it says both possible. Longer to entitle. This is exactly right. Yeah, it's much more technical coming in, but it means that it's going to be more difficult to do, and the people that do it are going to be a lot better. There's great wetlands mitigation is very common. We've pulled that out. Net usable buffers, retention, horizontal costs can be greater. That's absolutely true. External utilities are, I would say there's probably more civil contractors in Florida And I had more projects in Florida than I ever did in Texas from an expansion standpoint. I did projects in every city when I was in national construction. Bond yields, we talk about annual property taxes, lower taxes, both are very friendly. You have flood insurance on here depending on where you're at, hurricanes down here depending on where you're at. Most of this type of development though is inland. You're not going to be worrying about that stuff. Higher resale premiums. I would definitely say that if this is infill development, I think they're talking about larger land tracts, infill, faster absorptions, and so more institutional level. I think these are in and outs. Once approved, almost 100% of infrastructure. I think that if you're trying to get in, I think it's almost impossible not to do it. Like for us, we're not looking at it from a, I think we're looking at both of these markets, but the point is to cover the differences and to say, can you really take care of that, you know? Let's see here. You can get all the infrastructure, and there are very strong incentive teams. And I think it's kind of whatever you want to do. I think when you get to this level, you get to decide, and it depends on institutional level backing. We're starting to put in self-storage in some of ours in Ohio because on our proposals because it goes really well with light flex, or what we consider light flex, which is like small flex condos, also large land tracts for large dedications for 4-story self-storage. I think you look at any of those deals and you're going to see more self-storage deals in Florida. I think you're going to see more institutional level interest across all segmentation, with access to the water and everything else. So I still think Florida's a better market, but it's really impossible. We said by total volume. How do you compare those? The Villages, Lakewood Ranch, Cadence, Sun Terrace, Summerlin, Eastmark, Bridgeland, Babbitt Ranch. And so you look at the top here. Texas has a couple. Florida has 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Texas has 2. So this is the velocity and the size that we're talking about. The absorption and the sheer size of how big of a risk you can take and be fine. 14 communities, 38%, 12 in the top 35. Right. And some of these are very, very, very mature communities. The fact that you can make an MPC and sell it out, I don't think you need to do 50,000 acre MPCs. I think you can do 1,000 acres or 2,000 acres. 88% occurring communities with special purpose taxing districts, Texas, CDs. These financings facilitate infrastructure and are common. But if you get a low enough land basis, it doesn't matter where you do it. So I would disagree with that. We've looked at private utility and substations, pump stations, sewer extensions. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And that says if you don't structure it like that, you can move a lot quicker, less desirable and less quality and reliability is guaranteed, financing, lower ongoing taxes. But I said, aren't most built with that? Yes, 100% through bonds, fully accepted standard. Institutional prefers this, which I would agree. You have to go with what institutions want. No one is ever going to back a development that is not institutionally stamped. Higher land because of the CapEx, still rigorous. And if you can back into that by these builders, you're basically in a place like Florida. I think you just see that the takedowns are just insane. We're talking about different extensions, widely accepted or CDD or MUD backed infrastructure. And we talked about this. Don't want to wait 2 years. You can form a utility LLC or co-op, partner with a third structure cost recovery, optional layer and private infrastructure. Lots of options, unbelievable amount of tools, and no consultant's ever going to tell you this stuff. There's nobody in America that knows how to do all these in structuring. They can definitely give you one of these options, but they're not going to give you all the answers. So I came from one of the toughest entitlement markets, and one of the tightest constrained markets, super small towns with a bunch of broke people that can barely buy houses. and that's Columbus, Ohio. So we're in the fastest growing job center and um, jobs and what was the other one? Millennials in the Midwest. Top threes, and this has CDDs. We're talking about Florida only. CDDs allow developer to access public bond financing, front 10 million, transfer bond burden to end users over 30 years, recycle equity, reinvest, and scale. 15 plus active CDDs that finance every amenity from golf cart centers to whatever, long before it would have been absorbed. If you don't use a CDD, you must structure it with equity or debt. Fewer amenities, lower absorptions. If you do use a CDD, you're reimbursed. So if you want to be a massive top tier, then you're gonna have to use CDDs. 6 to 24 months. You want to get the best CDDs and right pre-application, petitions, legal notice period, public hearings, board appointment, all these different things. With the traditional, you want the best. This is big money, fast tracked or pre-formed. If you have a template and you pop it right in and get started, this is literally off the shelf. You're not going to buy one with that. That's not going to happen. If you work with a CDD, bond counsel, and underwriter, then you're going to be in great shape. So when you're putting this all together, um, and again, if you have a small one, this is very simple. So 1,000 acres in Florida is small, and that's big in Texas, I would say. That's massive where I'm from. We don't even look at deals over 100 acres. I said make a determination on which one has faster growth. 38%, 35%, 12 communities in the top 50. So Houston is really driving the MPC bubble. Austin's been overbuilt. There's not really overbuilding in Florida. It's very, very difficult. You can never keep up. Let's see. How many housing units is Florida short? That's definitely wrong. It's hard to say. Ohio has 200,000. I'm sure theirs is more than ours. But growth rate, 2.8 million people, 84% of the nation's population increase. Domestic and international migration. Texas added 560,000 residents. I think it's almost impossible. Texas actually added more and leading it in population growth. Extensive amenities covered by CDDs and help do that. Lakewood Ranch. I think for this, 2 years is not a long time, especially for massive, massive projects. The second you get land control and you can start selling a project, which we're already working on drawdown schedules and earn, you build your template and you start making offers and you start pushing out a lot of land entitlements. And like 1,300 seems massive in 1,300 houses. In my market, that would be insane. That would take you 10 years to sell. Maybe not. But in our market, 10 builders control 90% of the permits, and the net value increase of those builders every year might only be 2,000 housing units. So you'd have to bring in massive national players, BTR, which is what we're doing, or introduce multiple product lines to exit larger developments like that. You can't just entitle 300 houses and think it's going to go well. It says leads it in sales volume and Texas rapid development into the MPC sector. And so population grows. Texas has 31, 1.8. Florida's growing faster. Highest rate of international migration. You have lots of tourism here. I would say Texas is a lot less tourism. I had never been to Texas until I everybody from the Midwest and the Northeast wants to come to Florida, and I don't know anybody that needs to go visit Texas, you know? So I think in terms of tourism growth, it's a little bit stronger. Um, when Florida's grew at a fast rate, who has the fastest velocities? I asked it again. Texas has lots. Conclusion, they're very, 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 very similar. MPCs see rapid absorption, and I think you're going to see that like how many houses is Minta MPC? I just see what the name is. San Antonio, Florida. You couldn't put an MPC in Mirada. And this is the thing, like this is a one of the largest MPCs I've ever seen. So if I say, how fast will the Mirada sell out in Florida? Like 3 years. And so that's what I'm saying. In my market, a 2,000 home or 2,000 acre, it took 10 years or 20 years to sell out. And no amenities. That's like a big, I don't know who was advising nationwide. I doubt they built the kinds of teams. So this is a much more mature, strong market. It's harder to play in. You got to figure it out. I live in Miami, so it's a lot easier to do that, but that's the whole point. These sales velocities of and where are they moving? What counties are these moving to, right? Houston and Dallas, large scale developments, Sunterra, Bridgeland, Texas, but you could over entitle. What about the thesis? You can't over entitle in Florida and you could in Texas. I think that that's one of the questions that securing entitlements and um I'm talking about MPCs. So either way, these are talking about all the different advantages. It's almost identical. And we're talking about affordable housing. But I think that absorption, faster absorption rates in coastal and high demand markets, population growth, out of state migration. It has two massive. Florida has a high number of 55 plus, so it's a much broader audience, young. It has the entire thing, right? And when you sell that out, that's the whole point. One of the fastest, warm climate tax, affordable living, not down here in Miami. Solid absorptions, but land availability in larger tracts can slow down. Ex-urban MPCs have slower absorption rates compared to the high dense, high amenities. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So the idea is, if we're talking about MPCs, is there a limit to how many MPCs I can put together? Not really. I'm talking about pure economics, where I think absorption and takedowns is higher. There's no limit in theory. This is a theory that economics of over entitlements, where your absorption rates and they're higher in Florida, not Texas. We're talking about builder confidence. The people that ultimately buy my land, how much will they commit to? We're talking about builder confidence and lot takedown. So one of the things that you see here is if you study the master plans of these, the newer ones, the what is the right size of an MPC? I'm not even talking about affordable housing. High demand. Florida has experienced significant population growth. New York, California, a lot of money. Where is the money coming from? If it's coming from, you're not seeing money from Texas come here. Not really. You're seeing money in California come here. That's for sure. You're seeing a lot of Florida deployment in Florida and New York deploy into here. So large lots. Florida's housing market has higher builder confidence in suburban markets close to urban centers. Builders feel confident that lot takedowns, fast-growing markets will be absorbed quickly. And that's right. Favorable land, strong but more cautious. Certainly growing, but the rate of absorption and pacing of home sales tends to be more conservative in MPCs compared to Florida. Lower confidence. Now, one of the things I can also do is I have all of the annual reports of every builder, public builder, and we could look at lot control. Where do I have that right here. This is every public builder. I can only do 10. All right. So you can upload. Let's do all of these. Let's look at pure lot control by state across all public builders. Are more lots controlled in Florida or in Texas? So if you read 1,000 pages, which I gave it, and I say, 500,000 lots, 24% in the Southeast, highest presence in both areas, West Coast and Southeast, Florida and Texas, where they had strong market presence. They also leverage option contracts, Meritage. Both have robust. Texas having an edge in overall. Southeast Texas, strong for contenders, especially in areas like Orlando. So you have to look at what that looks like. And one of the things with MPCs is that you can get taller than like the largest developments in South Florida and Miami might be 1 million to 2 million square feet. MPCs, you can get up to 40 million square feet, you know? What about the largest developments in South Florida? I think MPCs, almost all of them have more square feet on 400 acres or more. So if you look at MPCs as a tool on how you entitle, how many million square feet, right? Boca Raton, 1,200 acres. And this is going to be the really technical thing, but one of the reasons there's no cap on how big you can go with horizontal development versus vertical. I was in vertical for 2 years. We fought for a long time. The village is not here. 100 million square feet. I'm saying, I'm saying that Miami can't touch this. You need land for more than 5 million square feet. So the ceiling on your development values and pipeline and highly dense, limited, you can't get 5 million square feet is one of the largest. It still doesn't reach it. Even Hudson Yards, 25 billion. Suburban outside of Miami or way out, right? Especially if you can go vertical, the combination of infill and MPC, right? If you look at corridor development plus the use of affordable housing incentives, you can create maybe two sides of a development, right? This side is a high-rise side on this side of the tower, kind of like Orlando. Those Orlando areas, you don't see a lot of it. The best zoning attorney in the state, I would say, what cities have the most live local exemption projects for height in Florida? I would say you're going to see it in Tampa and Miami, very little in Orlando. Miami's probably 80%. I think there's at least 18 projects going right now. I track a lot of development trends down here. Anyways, that's kind of an overview of the MPC, and now we're gonna look at this Mirada. This is the design guidelines for Mirada. This is the site map. So what we're talking about, this is land banked right here. This is the big lagoon, welcome center. It's like a city put it in the center. You have distribution, walking trails. They have a very good use and design with waterfront. Almost every lot in here has waterfront. It's very rare not to. This is a very low end product. Miranda has some around here. They put them in the worst ones. Um, Over here, you see Lennar's taken all these with waterfronts. DR Horton's taken them. You see that DR Horton has taken a lot of those. And these pods are in, um, these are like, we try to reduce cul-de-sacs. You see this, how these are loops like this with a very small cul-de-sac, which sometimes they'll do. We would still probably, this is a lot better. This is more of like a horseshoe off of a larger one, which is what we recommend. So either looping like this, depending on the layouts, which is why the more land you get, the more spread out you can be in the lower floor area ratios you can have. This is what I was talking about, where you can own all this and put high-rise stuff or timeshare, all the commercial stuff. You have residential, probably multifamily, multi-res. This is probably either multi-res or it's infill stuff, depending on what they're doing. But you can see how they are land banking the prime commercial and stuff and selling out to the builders. These guys are textbook. It's exactly what we do. We have to hit our hurdle on a land deal and then we sell the development, or we would JV it into an SPV with an infrastructure firm. So, but you see these West Bay, DR, but a lot of these Lennar is taking down the majority of it. And these builders know a lot of what they're doing. Active adult. These are people that, and you don't see any cul-de-sacs around here. You see, you're not supposed to have dead ends either. These are pretty open and they have frontages, right? But this shows you how to plat an example one. Now, what do we look at this? And when you feed this in, you look at the development overviews and how they do something like this. This is all the analysis that I've done. What we're looking at is we're talking about what are the tools that they use. The site is split into defined pods, which is really how you sell land tracts. Nobody wants to mix with each other. You need to carve them out, different like loops off of a main road, or different styles of it. So the site is split into pods labeled by builder or product segmentation, massive lagoon featuring anchoring the neighborhood. So depending on your size, that's one thing. We've looked at medical anchors and retail. Those two combined are some of the highest price per square or the highest job creation drivers. So it's not just that, but if you don't have this absorption, you can create it by creating small, independently done stuff. So there you've got entry level and attached, townhomes, small lots, single family, Lear lots and trails, parks, closer to the main boulevard, DR and Marana. So they put them out there, insulate them, they do them smaller. Move up and mid-size gated central parcels, model centers, some adjacent to the lagoon, Lennar, Ryan Homes, and Pulte style product of a move up. You don't see Ryan Homes in these. That's a mistake, but this is the best AI can do. Luxury and high end, larger estate size, cul-de-sacs, golf cart access, southwest quadrant near future and far edges. reserved for developer inventory or delayed luxury rollout because you want those over 5 years or over 3 years. You have a plan. Active adult, fully branded, targeting seniors, standalone sub MPC, which is very common. And that's for large. If you're going to take down multiple TODs, they're talking to an anchor. You normally want an anchor inside of your development. So an anchor is going to be, or you want to chop it up as many times as possible. Depends on the size, interest, your relationships, a lot of things. There's not that many public builders, maybe 10 or 15. There's not that many land teams. A call like that's probably their senior land director of all of the entire. So he's driving strategy for it and saying, yes, absolutely. It's hard to get that many lots in Florida, very rare. So this is kind of the pods. This is Lennar, DR, Miranda, custom and high end. They have some other small ones. The waterfront orientation anchored around that. So you want to think about pod count and development 18 to 22. And we're looking at that as how do you get out of gated neighborhoods, 3 distinct with G. These are prime for move up and privacy. If you want to be inside this, but you're super rich and you want to feel that privacy, very common. Land banking, we talked about that. So what do we want to land bank? This is what a typical MPC layout would be. We're studying the number one. If you look at this from 2022 to 2023, let me see if I can find this. The uh let's see here. DR Horton, top sales, 38% in Texas, Nevada. We were looking at the growth rate by what MPCs were the fastest growing in the entire, what was the fastest growing over 3 years. So this is what led us to Mirada. And it went from like 40 to, when you see that velocity, that's definitely not right. 22 is way less, but you see this absorption when you see it enter the top, especially from being small. If you plot all the MPCs and you look at their overall acreage, let's see here. I think it might have been. When did it jump, right? I think it entered right when it opened up and it'll sell out because it's so fast. And it's the fastest growing MPCs, 15-acre proximity. It's giving all this stuff. Ultra-Fi, offer the community its selling point, catering to the growing need for remote work, super fast internet, which is also super important for me. I work, what was it last 3 years? It just appeared on the list. It was like 45. And then let's see if it can find it. I don't think it'll be able to. Here you go. Yep. 430, 24% increase, top 10. New neighborhoods, expansion of amenities, and it's also because of phasing and the way that they go across the board and open it up, right? Huge investment in amenities, which you see as an anchor to what they're talking about. Coming back here, I don't know where that went. Oh, here it is. We're doing a Mirada master plan. So we looked at a lot of those things. We're talking about amenities. We talked about segmentation, builder segmentations, and takedown patterns. So we're seeing massive commitments up front for 10 pods. I sell pods, and in Ohio, I will not go past probably like, there's a certain cap. We can never grow as big as we want to. So I have to look at deals, and I'm starting to look at Central Florida, and I'm looking at Houston as a massive anchor. We want to diversify. Most institutions want to diversify. If we're going to take land holdings of 1,000 acres, it's very important to diversify by state and have much stronger commercial drivers than what these guys have had. That's more common where we're from. And looking for large anchors and sales strategies for bringing in the commercial aspect of it as well. 18 to 22, we talked about low roads, welcome centers, model centers, mail kiosks. And my parents have bought timeshares. It's very similar. Trail system, strategic absorption phased approach, cluster products, and takedown friendly pods. They're getting the whole thing sold out to avoid cannibalization. You want to sell a development out and have it all committed and delivered. You don't want to phase over 10 years. After 3 to 4 years, the resale or move up, they're going to start putting stuff on the market. So you want to sell out a community as quickly as possible. So if you have 2 years to do the infrastructure and entitlements, then you have a long time. And once that hits the market, it's probably a 5-year plan. You can count on a lot bigger. This is twice the size of the land tracts we're looking at. And it's like, where can I get 2,000 or 5,000 or 4,000 acres, right? Land banking, segmentation, custom, and luxury. I shared the site map and it started to look into it. Too large, but it talks about pod counts, segmentation, and lot size, builder groupings, waterfront, land banked, and entry level versus move up, as well as sales velocity. How do I exit out of them? 22, 7 to 9 are entry level, 6 to 9 are pods. Now, they didn't have any build to rent, which is probably on purpose. They could have brought that in and excluded it or given a hybrid for a build to rent with the right. We're platting townhomes and allowing people to potentially purchase them over time. And we're talking to institutions about that model as well to see if it's something they would consider. This is like not perfect, but land banking, retail and commercial, platting for absorption. It avoids product overlap. Pod segmented by size, access with gated is a higher end product. It creates exclusivity, and they're also land banking things later on. So 2,000 acres, San Antonio, 15 acres, number 33 for home sales. That's actually a lot higher this year. You could see that it's already 90% committed. Confirmed builders, they sold it to 5 different builders. And that is, you see how big these takedowns are. 900 lots up front to the 3 largest builders, and they introduced multiple segmentation, entry level, move up, senior. So working with, now they didn't touch affordable, they didn't touch build to rent, they didn't touch apartments, they didn't touch any of these types of workforce housing. There's a lot of different types of housing that people live in, and there's a lot of institutional level interest in these types of things. Where you have to look at QCTs and DDA disadvantaged areas. I can't even talk. As a way to drive that. Sometimes site selection is driven by incentives as well. We have a site right now that's that, and again, we don't see any problem with it. We feel comfortable tying the site up because the initial on the upfront, everybody's interested. So waterfront and lagoon facing lots. It talks about move up luxury, high end pricing with white sand amenity, almost like Dubai. That's really interesting. Southwest edges, future development, future luxury rollout, retail and commercial pads, infill because they sold everything out and everything got built. Tech, strategy, pod segmentation, phased absorptions, entry level move up luxury, land bank infill, water feature. This is the largest ones, right? Like when you have so much money, and you saw this introduced in our market in Columbus, but it was the slowest moving product. They tried to do the same thing, but couldn't. That really failed in our market. So we're trying to introduce other communities and show that the more absorption, we do absorption based off of tracked public record transactions. I shared the file again. Development standards, it talks about that. There's no potting, but it confirms that there's a review board, buffering, tree preservation, monotony rules exist. It talks about garage orientations. It talks about exact public records. It talks about where to go, but we don't need to do all that stuff. Then I asked it about the development standards for basically a master plan community or what they consider. They call this um, if it's written in the zoning code, that's what you have to look at. The zoning codes on what tools you can use. Master Planned Unit Development District, MPUD, right? PUD is more of an accepted, and I would say there's also employment centers or commercial. There's also, so again, when you do look at proper land planning and you see the absorbed, we are in a RM12 district, 12 dwelling units an acre, and we can do blended. So we can do estates, we can allow for the blended of this, and you kind of want it to be a weighted average. You want to push higher density at that townhome style and look at the platting requirements for it. When we put all this in here for this community, what it talks about is how that's done. It says minimum is 5 acres. You want to look at that. All residential types, active adult, recreational schools, commercial centers. We are looking at how to create a community impact as well. School integrations, carve outs for municipalities, medical benefits such as, I think a stronger retail presence in the center, which you don't see here. Just like a small town center with coffees and things could make a big difference. I think they kind of lost on that. But we think about what I've lived in master plan communities, and it's nice to have really big clubhouses and nice amenities. Even a hot tub in Ohio is nice enough. All residential, RES to RE24, convenience, neighborhood density. You can go all the way up to um, townhomes and PUD are a lot higher. And then you can start to stack them to get even higher density, which is the point. So if you have a 5-story apartment building or 4-story walk-ups, which are common down here, I've never seen that in where I'm from, but talks about mixed use thresholds, creates a premium zone. It has retained pods. It talks about these, and then we write a letter to people that we're looking at working with us. So again, if you said, what is the weighted average of why this is the top selling, fastest absorbed new MPC in Florida? If you have to weight all of it, what is important? Lagoon amenity, 15-acre lagoon offering lifestyle that drives demand. Waterfront amenity enhances it, luxury and move up. Premium lot sales, they have tons of water integrated. I totally agree with that. The segmentation is amazing. Multiple builders. I think they could have gone more. You would have seen takedowns, but in different styles, but they probably didn't really care that much. They probably spent a lot more on the design and high-end features and civil than anything else. So I don't think there was a lot, but if they had a larger team, I'm guessing this team's like 5 people or less. Um, Builder takedowns, clusters, segmentation, risk is minimized, and clear takedown strategies per builder. So how do the builders want to absorb ours? They talk to them on the front end. That's what we do as we're putting concepts together. We say, what about this product? What about this? We're giving them market absorption. We're talking to them about, hey, what if I can get another builder to come in? Would you do this? Would you commit to 50? Right. Would you option 25 and guarantee it and option the next 25 and I can sell them out? We're trying to get the full community sold out on the front end. It's very different with smaller communities. It's a lot easier. They only have 5 builders. We're talking to 45 builders already, same thing. Strategic location in Tampa, highly desirable submarket. Regional connectivity, which is what we talked about, comes straight in. It's the first thing. Where does all the traffic come from? It's not from south, it's from the north. So, and it's right off the highway, which is a big one. Community-oriented design, master plan design, community trails, dog parks, fitness, active lifestyles, trails, fitness stations, ultra-fi internet, growth, and institutional on demand. 59% growth, a testament to robust demand and absorption, institutional investment grade, and scalability. Did they develop all the infrastructure? One of the things that we're debating is roadways, utilities, and stormwater technological. I don't think they did for the expansions off the main corridors. One of the things that we're looking at is may not have fully developed the infrastructure. Typically, it's often developed in phases, which I disagree with. I think if you can get stronger commitments and you can get, especially for lot takedowns, in clusters, they could have pushed their builders by double or triple in this development. We have 17 builders in ours, on our largest MPC in Ohio, called Jerome Village by Nationwide. And let's see here. Preliminary infrastructure, potential for deferred infrastructure, main corridors, land banking and future development, build out phase. We believe doubling the builders and doing all infrastructure with a lower land basis and all platting is the fastest way to sell out a development. That's what we believe. So you plat doubling and fully and doing it, very strategic, accelerating the sellouts. By doubling the number of builders, diversifying the types, price points, homes, wider range of buyers, builder reputation. They have very strong names, accelerated lot absorption, competition pressure among builders, on-site millions it's built in. Builders will strive to move their inventory, which can lead to faster takedowns, quicker turnaround time. So we do a similar project, which is pods, breaking it up into pods. Fully developed means that and no delayed amenities. And what we also see is also institutional lending is favorable with non-recourse debt and full infrastructure build out. Institutional lending, much more favorable when it has fully structured. It's non-recourse, reduced risk, attracts larger lenders, 1,000-acre MPCs. This makes them more comfortable committing capital. I don't think you need 1,000 acres. There's MPCs as small as 500, 400. Non-recourse, stronger infrastructure, institutional level de-risk developments, predictable cash flow, builder takedowns, appeal to conservative lenders. Most lenders are low risk, faster access to funding, and the ability to absorb all verticals. So we can have, we split risk, residential, commercial, industrial, scaling up like master plan. And that's what we think, that they're missing a lot of products, that mixed use, retail, affordable, and also making sure that employment is a part of it. And this is part of our checklist for larger developments, cross subsidiation between segments, balance financial risk. We can also bring in the largest projects right now are PPPs. This wasn't a PPP, but it could have been, right? So there's not a public-private partnership. Wasn't done that. So when you come out of this market, affordable housing, LIHTC developments, or land and tax credits, and this is the big thing, environmental and sustainable planning. I think they are missing community impact, schools, public benefit, etc. Public-private partnerships, and attaining more affordable housing for low income or income restricted, no jobs creation, etc. they really missed in terms of this. Very different than our region. Let's see what it says. So the Mirada project, as successful as it is, it falls short in key areas that are increasingly important in modern development, especially when you look at large plan. If you are counting on a 400-acre project, there's no medical, a big medical anchor. Recreational, it lacks the direct investments in education, community-driven social infrastructure, school partnerships, school education, long-term community benefits, schools, community centers, social infrastructure with its rapid population growth. Basically, think of the reasoning of homesteads development moratorium. When you come out of this market, I had a call today that said, and we've had them in Columbus too. When you put too much residential without a community benefits, you start seeing that. So if you want, there's we're talking about affordable housing. So these are the large anchors that are missing it and how they could have done better. And this is just from long-term communities, partnerships with school districts, expanding educational resources, even putting in an elementary school, having a healthcare facility, an ambulatory center. You could give a firehouse, fire, EMS directly on site. You didn't see that. Emergency responders, health clinics, rehab clinics. There's a lot of public benefits through housing, hybrids, special needs that you don't see here. Um, it says that the lack of affordable housing, fastest growing market, glaring oversight. Affordable housing is a huge plus. It also talks about expanding workforce housing. Don't solely cater to buyers, luxury buyers. Percentage of it is affordable, subsidized. And that's what that live local is. So coming out of this market, it's a big part of it. This is a big city that the public benefit is very important. There's not large housing gaps in San Antonio, Florida, but there will be someday. And that's in every city. There's affordable housing in every city. And when some of those people can't afford it in 10 years or 20 years, it's going to be something that they'll be critiqued on. Public-private partnerships largely built as a private venture with limited public involvement. Did they have town halls? Did they talk to the public? Did they see what the cattle ranchers want? It's silly, but it's important. Maybe a vet clinic could have gone in here. They could have just carved out a small thing for that in a master planned proper development. A PPP structure would allow you to share risk, long-term community goals. So you ask them what they want and you look at community centers, you see one of the most popular things in the city of Columbus. This is more of like things, but this is what's important. Columbus focused on job creation for a long time, and it's why we're the #1 job center in the Midwest. You don't see that here. They don't care about job centers. So that's why you could probably double your land holdings and do 2,000 acres or carve it out a little faster because there's a lot, there's no self-storage. There's where do I put my stuff, right? While Mirada offers residential spaces, there's no substantial job creation linked to the development on attracting people to buy homes. It's not creating a sustainable economic ecosystem. Integrating job creation, such as providing corporate business parks, light industrial or commercial offices, which is all stuff that we do. This has a great, even tech or medical campus. Lack of resilience, lagoon and resort style. It's not on or climates, things, sustainable energy. So solar, this is exactly right. Putting solar on top of buildings, having large and like LEED certifications. While Mirada's approach heavily on luxury, community first model is more aligned by structuring developments, and it serves as a prime example. It says that the reasoning behind it is an infrastructure and resource strain, which is why we talk about the use of private utilities from day one at large enough land tracts. And so when you look at some of this stuff, infrastructure and resource drain, development often outpaces the ability to provide infrastructure so that they're pushing it to the private markets. So you can stop that overburdening infrastructure, water, sewer, roadways, lag behind. It can drive up costs. They have to look at it. They have to look at what can we do. That's the whole point of why you want a public-private partnership. Environmental protection and land conservation, even more important, which is why this is part of that. It's about relating with the focus on Florida that it considers environmental resiliency, how land development can handle flooding, stormwater management, which is always part of it. Stormwater management is common, but some things like that. How do you maybe you dedicate a small area for conservationists, right? Like people that want to come, or a small like public benefit or public exhibit for pets, right? Like little animals that people can pet or something like that. Affordable housing inequity, which is large scale developments do not include that, and they have so aligning it with the housing challenges and workforce. A key reason for them is housing unaffordability and making there's large commitments. There's $3 billion project in Florida, and we started one of our anchors as an affordable housing project in a tax district, and there wasn't a lot of interest. So we switched it up and built to sell. So we tested it out, and we still want to. It's in a great area. We could do a future carve out. I don't have 500 acres. Zoning and planning inconsistencies. We're talking about development moratoriums, look at local zoning codes, flood risk, hurricanes, flooding, rising sea level, community engagement. Development moratoriums can do that. Given all these, if you were a panel of development associates and public, how would you rate the overall project? Now, aligning it. It's profitable, but I think it could be improved. I'd probably rate it as 7. Let's see. 8. Oh, there's the profitability. Highly profitable, low risk, land bases could be lower. Community impact, dog parks and that, but areas of improvement, public needs, environmental and sustainability. And so we're talking about, this comes down to, these are the pillars of development. It talks about low income. It also talks about jobs, triple Ps, public impact, housing, healthcare, schools. These are institutional level uses. And talking to public operators, I'm sure someone would have wanted an expansion campus up here, especially if there's going to be 3,000 new houses in an elderly center. Environmental, stormwater management, but it could have been LEED or Energy Star, Florida resilience, native landscaping, wildlife, regulatory, by right zoning. Okay, here we go. There could be regulatory bodies and smooth approvals. This is why when you start that, if you want to fast track a development, I used to fight, and I see it rated pretty close to mine. Total long-term viability could be improved by incorporating more of that. Local workforce training, affordable homeownership pathways, educational centers, strong potential, but scaling into larger ones. The Texas requires a holistic approach that emphasizes community impact, social sustainability, and affordable housing. And our goal is full closing and sellout within 5 years. With that, you need a very wide efficiency and rapid absorption, and you need more than that. So you could have for example, a dog daycare, a children's educational center, a museum, etc. We're talking about different benefits and retail carve-outs that would have been social sustainability and resident attraction. And so this is how I could put an MPC right next door and put the same lagoon in mine and beat them a little bit. What are the real problems with people? Educational and daycare centers, right? Working parents, family oriented, attract young parents, high quality daycare, hub for socialization, public parks, school zones. I didn't even see a public park. We'd have to see, but green spaces. So these are landscape architects. Who would do a perfect job at this? I think town halls and conceptual overviews or development inquiries would help requests for feedback, right? When municipalities change that, urban planning, that's not the right thing, but landscape architecture, community engagement specialist, that's not hard to do. You just go there. Town halls, surveys, public hearings, public-private partnerships, P3s, right? So that is how this development could have done better. How would you do this write up to a family office with an impact investing as one of their 3 pillars to invest? Would you recommend or pass on it? So we're saying, let's say you're raising. Okay, that's wrong, but I'm talking about the San Antonio Mirada. The key lies in adding that, but would you recommend this? Pretend you are their financial manager and I was your consultant. We gave this development a scorecard and they are considering a $10 million investment in the next one. So would you recommend them? It says, if I were doing it cautious yet positive, recommendation with conditions. And that's the whole point. Strong market fundamentals, Pasco County, profitability, risk diversification, social impact, affordability. One of the biggest areas lies in affordable housing and income restricted units, impact, public-private partnerships, community engagements. There's not a lot of other educational spaces, public benefits, full infrastructure development, plans to build all infrastructure upfront, institutional lending and non-recourse, land basis, larger tracts, the lower land basis, which is what we do. We focus on the lowest land basis as possible. Community impact, long-term viability. It says the lacks critical elements such as schools, public parks, job creation, which are emphasized in the most successful triple P driven projects. There is room to add these potential PPPs, public segment. There's not a lot of public amenities. It's again a gated community, private, HOA. I recommend improving these with this. Ensure more affordable housing. 10 million is enough to buy all of your land for a 2,000 acre park. So if I was writing this and someone asked me to be their consultant on land development, which I'm sure will happen because I'm an expert, I'm not perfect, but I study a lot. Ensure more affordable housing is development, particularly entry-level home or income restricted, or those at the greatest disadvantage, which would be drug addictions, integrate more community amenities such as educational centers, job creations, long-term social sustainability with impact investing. If you look at impact investing in infrastructure, I think they control the infrastructure, which is great, but impact is a big one. Work on establishing public-private frameworks for future phases. Get ahead of it. Long-term, enter a market and do it long-term. If it's Central Florida or Tampa, where are you going? Additional builder partners, segmentation and density, establish a clear plan to integrate institutional financing options. Strong project, yes. I think ours could win. You have to think if I'm an MPC, ours could win against one like this. what would you recommend as the pillars for a 10 out of 10 MPC with a checklist? Right. So even the land use and zoning, diverse land use, balanced mix of residential, commercial, recreational, affordable housing, entry level, and luxury estates. Flexible zoning. This is the zoning part of it. Land use and zoning, which is only one piece of the pie. Overlays, eco-trans, creative land use, future growth, clustering in pods, which we already do. Land banking, especially for the family office. Like even making a difference, a school, giving a naming rights. What would someone want to own? What could I sell the name on? Not really a cluster. I think naming rights to for donations, museums, public parks, etc., right? So naming rights can be highly effective, foster involvement, stronger partnerships, philanthropists, community organizations, naming rights for that. Public sparks is okay, so we'll get into that in a second. The other thing that we talked about was full build out of infrastructure, utilities, water, sewer, electric, water, stormwater. And that's because you can sell all of it out and get exit faster. You don't have to phase it. No phasing. Doing takedowns and segmentation by not just asset classes, but what's being driven by the market. Having institutional level relationships with all asset classes and local brokers. Super important. It'll never write that, but internal road connectivity, main boulevards, collector roads, pedestrian bike lanes. I didn't see that. I didn't see bike lanes in there. We'd have to go walk it. Integrate stormwater, rain garden swales, retention, smart city elements, fiber optics, electric vehicle charging, tech savvy residents, even centralized parking to reduce parking demands. Community amenities, demographics, public parks, recreational facilities, pools, sports card. I'm sure they have a lot of this stuff. Central hubs, towns, farmers markets, cultural hubs. Integrate schools, childcare centers, educational spaces, 55 plus, even like a little golf course or a 9-putt golf course, right? Like more amenities that you see a lot more of. This is a four-weather city where you can be outside it's a four-season city. Affordable housing set aside of 20 to 30%, community integration so that they don't feel isolated or left out, workforce housing, zoning and density bonuses, and that's what we talked about with Live Local, one of the advantages of here. Sustainability, environmental stewardship, sustainable design, sustainable construction practices, LEED certified homes, solar energy, green roofs, natural resources like wetlands, green spaces, energy efficient houses, nature trails, eco-friendly, and water conservation. Connectivity and mobility, multimodal. This is huge in Columbus. Bike paths, alternative mobilities, e-scooters, bike shares, car rentals, golf carts, really like a big one. EV charging, friendly design, economic job creation, huge that they missed, massive. Provide local businesses, retail and service oriented employment centers, business parks, office parks, co-working hubs, huge, especially for this many houses. We set up light flex as well, which allows small businesses to enter and own condos or rent them from an institution. So we have 40, 1 per 10 household, right? It's a small business, I'm sure. Aim for institutional level capital via non-recourse, fully backed infrastructure, PPPs for community and social infrastructure. Have a clear exit strategy with builder buyouts, REITs, or real estate funds. We're doing 4 stores. We look at institutional level transaction activity, for example, institutional level transaction activity by asset class is something to add to it, right? What size? Baking that in with carve outs and part of the master plan shows, hey, if you have stuff, we're going to be able to store it here, right? Builder segmentation, adaptive layout, smaller home, town, multi-generational, very big in Texas, super popular, faster takedowns, marketing and sales, and that's it. I'd add appraisal, capital markets, incentives and credits, a full sponsorship team. stronger anchors, and this is more of appraisal, capital markets, incentives and credits, and full sponsorships. This all goes into the opportunity zones, full sponsorship teams, like large anchor institutes, corporate tenants, educational hubs, healthcares. Talk to the large institutions. Hey, do you have interest over here? Especially if you have 2,000 acres, there's medical campuses that can be that big. This is the full, and we talked about expanded. So this is the checklist of this is the checklist, and that's the whole point. So this is also integration of rental product, right? Clearly from the beginning. Also introduction of 1 out of 3 people rent, not own. So institutional level integration and affordability below ownership. So smaller, this is what we do. And so let's make the entire full length checklist for that's bulletproof for an MPC as an advisor on what kind you should invest in. This is our best work. I was in national. I mean, I could get way in more into detail. Land velocity sales, public, data-backed underwriting. This is MPC investment checklist and structuring it for success. So what I would do is I'm probably gonna turn this into an article that will rank the Mirada, one of the fastest growing sub markets, and rate it 1 to 10. And also our this is our checklist here. And this is for our video. So this will be our evaluating structuring for success. And now, can you do this into a case study of Mirada and how successful it is and where it falls short, as lengthy as possible? We'll see where that ends up, and that'll be everything. Thanks for watching, guys.